And let me get this ready here. And let me go over. Okay. Okay, Blessing, recording in progress. Okay, Chair.
Okay, so we will open the meeting. This is the regular meeting of the Milford P&Z, March 4th, 2025. If we're not going to stand for the pledge, but we will do a little bit longer moment of silence if folks would like to recite the pledge to themselves, and then consider what their moment of silence is meaningful to them. So we could please do that. All right, that's wonderful. So if we could, Sue, please call the roll.
Mr. Agnesi.
Present.
Mr. Alling.
Present.
Mr. Anderson.
Present.
Mr. Hirsch. Mr. Collegian.
Present.
Mr. Macchio. Mr. Mortimer.
Present.
Mr. Sadi.
Present.
Mr. Zaharidis is excused, and Chairman Quish.
And I am here as well. I think I did not hear Mr. Hirsch, but I did see him.
No.
So I don't know if he waved or.
He's here.
Okay. So we do have one bit of business that I'd like to call in first. David, is to set a date
Oh, okay.
for
So that for New Haven Avenue, I mean, I have that under staff report. We can do it then.
Okay, you know what? I just soon get it over with so that if we run long, we don't get, if we're tired, we just don't miss it.
Okay,
So if you would explain it, and then I would ask for a motion.
sure. So on the 7th of January, the board approved a zone change for 1481 New Haven Avenue. But we neglected to set an effective date. So an effective date has been recommended in the motion that was distributed. It would be effective, I believe, March 28th.
Okay, so if we could hear a motion to set the effective date.
I'll make a motion to set an effective date, which I believe is March 28th of 25 for zone change at 1481 New Haven Avenue, which was approved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, without objection, motion passes. Okay, so now we get into the meat of the meeting. So just to refresh, we have gone considered zone changes. We've considered the need for public housing. We have explored the need for accessible housing, affordable housing. You know, there's a lot of words, a lot of language around making sure that we are inclusive in how we try to shape development, and we can do that by zone change. And here's what we have started with. And again, it's not the only thing we're going to look at is the CDD2. We're going to look at all commercial development districts and to see throughout the town where we feel we can add value to the citizens of Milford by encouraging housing development. We need more housing, and to encourage affordable housing because we need housing options. So if you would, David, give us a quick overview of how we got here, and as I just did a little bit, but and then go through what we have come up with as an idea to start with for tonight for the CDD2, which is Devon Bridge to McDonald's on the Post Road, from the corner of Naugatuck and US 1 down to the beach at the West Shore Beach. So that's to just give everybody context of what this specific zone is and what the specific zone change that we propose or will propose tonight. That's just what it affects.
Okay. So basically, I mean, you sort of set the table, explaining what the purpose of the proposed changes are. And since the board had been talking about looking for ways to increase housing, we convened the regulation subcommittee, and over the course of several meetings, the proposed language, which is not in stone, and this is just a working draft that's been put together by the subcommittee to then be discussed this evening to get input from the rest of the board members. This is not a public hearing tonight, so it's only the board members who can chime in. And after tonight, we'll see what further tweaks we need to make. This isn't going to be our first bite at the apple. This will take as many meetings as it takes, and then once the board is satisfied that the language is what they want to pursue, it'll be distributed to the various councils of governments and the state that we have to send these things to, and then scheduled for a public hearing to hear what the public thinks. So we can
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just definitely want to reinforce that because I do see a bunch of the public here.
Yeah.
This is a not a public hearing, but there will be a public hearing at one point. And again, the goal is here to come up with come up with language that we can circulate and then move this forward to public hearing as soon as we get response from the Regional Council of Governments, et al., whoever else we, local neighbors we have in the town to make sure that they approve, as we do for every zone change. So, David, if you would go through, and again, this was not just the subcommittee. We have had public comment, and we have invited, professionals, lawyers, developers, local community groups to talk about housing in general. So this is really the outgrowth of a year's worth of digging in the garden, so to speak. There really is more than just the subcommittee that has got us here, and staff has done a lot of work as well. And I thank you, David. But if you would just go over what we decided to bring forth tonight, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So the language that's in yellow is new. Language that is in green is for discussion. So right now, the CDD2 is an interesting zone because it allows a lot of different uses, from residential to commercial. Generally speaking, that zone is one parcel deep. There are some exceptions in the zone where you have a couple of blocks that have a parcel that are a couple of blocks deep, but a majority of the zone is a single parcel deep, which is why it's considered a corridor district. So the thinking was that to increase dwelling units and the ability for people to expand their families, monetize their properties, the idea of allowing housing to single and two-family dwellings to expand basically as of right up to a total of 3 units under certain conditions. So if you have an existing single-family house or a two-family house, you can convert it to 3 units within the existing structure in accordance with the building code, as long as you can provide parking for those additional units in accordance with 5.1. The maximum number of units can't be more than 3 per lot, and tandem parking to accommodate the new units is prohibited. So if you meet those 3 criteria, the thinking is you can add those units. What the subcommittee sort of went back and forth on was, gee, should the additional units be affordable? Should that be a requirement? And that's why we have the green there. So originally that was a requirement that was in there, then it was removed, and then it's sort of here for discussion now to sort of take the temperature of the board. If, for instance, you have a single family house and you want to add a unit, adding that 1 unit and making that unit affordable basically is a 50% affordability for the property. So whether or not that works from the homeowner's perspective and the annual reporting requirements, that I don't know. But it's there for discussion. If the board looks at that and wants to have the additional housing be affordable, then the next question is, at what level would you want it to be affordable? Because under 830G, you have sort of 2 levels of affordability. You have basically 60% of the market rate or 80% of the market rate, and that could be a choice the board will make. 80% gives you a higher rent. 60% gives you a lower rent, but opens up the ability for more people to try to rent that unit. So.
Okay, David, so one thing, just a little housekeeping, I'd like to rather than dive in on each one, is to go through all the different changes. Then we'll come back here to discuss each individual one.
Okay.
I think that it'll avoid people thinking this is the only change and diving and doing a deep dive on it.
Sure.
If we see all the different potential changes, then we can see the relative impact or import of each. Thank you.
Okay, so this involves the single and 2-family houses. So now we're removing this. This is it's already been removed, actually. That's why it's crossed out. So now we have new language for mixed use and or multifamily residential building meeting the following conditions. Giving it the quick broad brush, this is new construction of multifamily residential buildings, and these would be the conditions that you can create these multifamily buildings. And just some background for those joining us tonight. Right now, under the CDD2 regulations for housing, you can have a 1-family house, you can have a 2-family house, you can, under our statutes, have 830G, and then there's also a variation of 830G development in the CDD2 that you can have. And then it takes a big jump to, you have to have 2 acres of land to create multifamily housing. So one of the goals here was to be able to create multifamily housing that is between a 2-family house or a 3-family house and a 2-acre parcel multi-unit development. So that's what this would be addressing. And then again, and everything we're doing is sort of like a 2-tier process where you can create something as of right, and then if you'd like to get a bonus of some sort, by providing an affordability component, you can do these other extra things. So for this particular zone, if in this particular part of the regulation, if you want to provide 15% affordable housing, then you can go higher. You can have more building coverage, and that's sort of the carrot. So you can build more in exchange for the affordability. Again, this section, like the previous section, there was discussion, should there be a sliding scale or not? And this is a proposed sliding scale. Again, not in granite, it's there for discussion. And then the regulations go into expansion of existing commercial buildings to add residential uses on Bridgeport Avenue, because the character of Bridgeport Avenue is different than the character of Naugatuck Avenue, which are the two main arteries that make up the zone. And this goes into allowing only vertical expansion for buildings that are there. Someone wanted to add on to them, and again, there's a carrot in there that can go higher. One of the conditions, of course, with all of this is a concern for parking. So in a way, parking is going to sort of drive the bus, because if they can't provide parking, then they're not going to be able to add the units. And then we have the conversion of existing commercial buildings to all residential, and for buildings not located on Route 1. So this would be Naugatuck Avenue. Again, you can have a fully residential building, meeting these requirements. The setbacks and most of the heights and coverages are already existing in the zone. In the case of if you're able to do this, again, there's conditions and there's outdoor space for the people who would live there that you have to be usable. And again, if you want to be able to build more, and in this case go a little higher, again, we'd be looking for a percentage of it to be affordable. Again, like the previous sections, there's a number there right now, or a sliding scale, again, for board's discussion. And then there's cleanup things in the regulations. We have to fix a number there. Have to add a section here talking about what the open space area is. And I believe that's it. Talks, building height. Right now there's a standard building height in the zone, which is 40 feet. And then we're just, letting people know except is provided for in the housing set aside developments. That 40 feet could differ depending on what's ultimately done with those earlier regulations. And that's it. Just, fixing little things in the zone, and that's it. So that is the CDD2 as currently drafted.
So I did see you had taverns prohibited.
Yeah.
In yellow. That are we taking that out, or you're putting it in?
We're putting it in. We're putting it in because we don't allow taverns. We don't approve taverns. Part of the issue is we do have some historic taverns in town, but it's not a use that.
Anyway, that's that's something that we don't, personally, I think should be taken out of it. Throughout restaurants, we want to encourage commerce and development, and
right.
You get down. I obviously there's taverns on both Naugatuck Ave and US 1. So to limit those businesses that already exist.
Well, it wouldn't affect the ones that already exist.
Yeah, I know. So but it's a thumb on the scale that I personally I won't buy into. But just so we all know, this is obviously open for discussion, and the again, the goal, just to reiterate, the goal is that number one is to clean up the zoning regulations to try to promote economic development, and the thinking behind the more housing and housing density along Naugatuck Avenue, and the post road, the whole design is it can help create wealth for our citizens, where they have sort of a commercial zone CDD2. If they want a 2-family, they can make it. They can make it happen on their single family, or they want a 3-family with their either single family or 2. It's not changing the character of the neighborhood because there are so many pre-existing either 2s or 3s or commercial or small apartment complexes or some condominiums, some work, some office condominiums, and residential. I think that it's different than what I think we all kind of abhor is how 830G can go into a fully residential area and put up apartments, whether we want to or not. So this is partially to give us ammunition to either get to 10% or to be able to get another hiatus from the regulation. But the first thing here is really, I think, an opportunity for some of our citizens to build some wealth for themselves, add some housing to the marketplace, which I think we all know there is a housing crunch. The question we have now is, do we want to require additional units to be affordable? And there are, there's a great feeling that, yeah, it should be. Now, there's a little bit of a burden to do that. You have certain reporting burdens on both sides. On the city side, so let's say you have a 2-family and you're going to make it a 3, you have 1 unit that now becomes a file that somebody's got to go check and make sure that this 1 unit is affordable. Now, is that the end of the world? Is it really something that the present owner and the future owners are going to be diligent with? I don't know. I think it's just a question that we should think about. I don't know that, if there are an additional dozen units in 5 years that meet the requirement and then add the burden, I'm not sure that's the value we're trying to reach with affordability. I think we reach the affordability with larger units. That's my 2 cents, but I'd like to hear thoughts of anybody on this one piece, each piece as we go.
If I may, Jim,
Yeah.
just to follow up on what you're saying, I think that just with respect to the single family or 2-family dwellings, I think you need to get rid of the affordable component because it actually inhibits development at that level. You talk about mom and pop stuff. If your true goal is to add units right away, I think the way to do it is to monetize let the owner monetize it, and don't strap that affordable burden on those size units. Let's leave it for the bigger stuff. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there, personally.
Yeah, I also.
So yeah, please go ahead. And
I just want to say
and-
I agree, and I think looking at that sliding scale, I think maybe you can start with what is it, 8 to 10? You have to have one
Hey,
affordable.
John, we're gonna do each section individually. Right now, we're just on the 1 to 2s, the 2s and
Okay.
3, 1, 2s and 3s. I appreciate.
Right.
I hear what you're saying, but let's try to keep it because we have like kind of 4 different units. Let's try to get agreement on each. And I see Joe and Ita both have their hands up. David, you can be
Okay,
the
so I'll make
concierge.
my point really.
We lost you, John. You're talking, but we don't hear you. It's not showing you muted, but we still can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, now we can.
All right, you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's too much for the homeowners to deal with. I think we should make it as easy as possible. And yeah, no affordable for homeowners expanding. That's my thought.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Sharon. And Eton and Joe both have their hands up. David?
We'll go with Joe. His hand was up first.
I should have just jumped right in because John and Brian stole the words out of my mouth. But yeah, I think that especially considering that if you have more units under the way this is drafted, you don't actually have to have any affordable units. That if you have, you know, a 3-unit house, and I also think that those smaller, you know, 2 and 3 and 4 unit homes are a segment of the housing market that we could really use to have more of. So I would be in support of removing that requirement.
Thank you, Joe. Etan? Muted.
He's having the same problem that John had, because it's not showing as muted, but we can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you. Okay, I think he is probably reconnecting, and Brian has something to say.
Thank you. I was looking for the hand to put up. I could not find that. A lot of work has gone into this, and I appreciate the work that members of the subcommittee have done. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but my reflection on the first section is similar to what's been stated. It brings to mind the question of, does the language of 13.17.1.1 have to do with existing owners and what they do with their property, or be interpreted as benefiting perhaps investors? I would not want to see the city basically tell owners that are in owner-occupied property that they have to meet some mandate that's very difficult for them to meet. So I just wanted to concur with some of what has been said.
Brian, I'm sorry, I don't understand your concern. I mean, I think it will run with the land. So if somebody sells their property, the new owner would have whatever rights are inherent.
The way that I see this written currently, it says existing single and 2-family dwellings. It doesn't speak to ownership. So what I'm saying is that it allows for the current owners who may be in owner-occupied dwellings. By the same token, it allows investors or absentee owners to be able to.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is definitely,
the issue that I have, Jim.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand what your thought is, that there's kind of a national concern about investor-owned, either, you know, whatever, just taking over, you know, venture capital or
yeah, we have
or
to,
whatever.
Right.
Now, the thing is, we don't, and David will obviously speak to this. That is totally outside our capacity to regulate.
We have to think of unintended consequences.
Yeah, but there's absolutely nothing in our mandate as zoning and planning department and officials and staff to give us any right to discuss who owns what.
So just to be clear then, the question is, the intent was to benefit current owners.
Yeah. And, you know, and if grandma leaves her 2-family to her 3 grandchildren and they want to have 3 apartments, then they're welcome to do it, you know. And again, a million other things. Does somebody want to take a single family, turn it into a 3 and have Airbnbs? Well, we can't prevent it, but it really is not the intent, but it is right now the opportunity for the Milford citizens and property owners and it also provides more housing. You know, so it's providing housing, and it is giving these folks an opportunity to to build some wealth. That's how I look at this section. I don't think we can ever come up with something here that will dissuade corporate ownership. I think that there could be, maybe in the alders could talk about something. I don't know. It's beyond our mandate is all I know for certain. Am I correct, David?
That is correct.
Okay.
And the biggest real estate trusts that are doing that are actually buying single family homes around the country. They're not buying multifamilies. Clearly, there are ones that do multifamily, but the big concern, a lot of these are buying single family homes and controlling whole markets by buying single family homes.
But in fact, there are multi-unit owners that are in a very large city near us, and they have been acquiring multifamily units in our community in increasing numbers.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that seems to be the trend.
Yeah. Again, you can't control that through zoning, though. We can't do that. It's not our area.
I do hear your concern, though, Brian.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Aton is back and his hand is raised.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. What is tandem parking?
Tandem parking is when you park one car in front of the other. So, you know, at your single family house, you're parking in the driveway, your wife pulls in behind you. That's perfectly fine. You're all in the same unit. You want to switch the cars around. You have control over all the cars there. In a multifamily setting, we can't have that because if the people on the first floor are blocking the people on the third floor, that's unworkable. So that's why when we look at increasing parking, the tenants have to have a free flowing access to and from their parking spaces without being blocked by anyone else in the house.
Yeah, I just wonder how you're going to enforce that. If you're going to go from a single to a 3-unit, how you're going to enforce a provision prohibiting.
So Eton, so it's really, we can't enforce it. They can't do it. But if they need a certain amount of parking, they can't use tandem parking for the calculation. So that's all. Yeah, that's all we can do is say, if you need 5 spots, you need 5 spots, but none of them can be tandem. Now, if you park tandem in front of all of them, that's none of our business. But you just can't count them towards being compliant with the parking.
Right. So when they come in for a permit, we're going to be looking at a site plan that's going to spell out where all the parking is, so we know by the letter of our regulations that they comply. How they implement it after that, again, as the chairman said, you know.
Right. And so yeah, you raise the next step, David, which is anytime someone's going to convert a single to a 2 or a 2 to a 3, they're going to have to come to us for a site plan. So we still have.
No. The intent of this for single and 2 family dwellings, this isn't going to be an over-the-counter permit. This is supposed, we want to make it easy. We want to make it easy. And, you know, you never see single family or 2, generally we don't have too many 2 families, but you won't see a single family unless it's a CAM.
Right.
Yeah.
If I
But it will
may,
be part of the application. They have to show the parking.
Right.
And they have to show the parking over the counter or to us, but it's over the counter. They need 5 spaces. They have to have 5, none of which can be tandem. And they could park, if they're all 5 open and they have 10 cars there because they're all tandem, that's none of our business.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you.
if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
thank you. For some reason, like Mr. Anderson's, we have no tab that lets us raise our hand. But I want to comment on the work that the committee did. It's really a lot of work. But as of the last meeting, and I really appreciate Brian Collegian's thoughts because this is all what we're discussing. The idea of adding that one with having it affordable was discussed. We didn't know where we were going to go, but more importantly, the way it's languaged now in 317.11a, you can have 2 units on top of a single family and only 1 unit on top of a 2 family. And if we're going to do it that way, then maybe we might want to consider that if you're going to go from 1 to 3, that one of those should be affordable. Now, that wasn't discussed in the regulation subcommittee, but I think that was, I mean, it wasn't, we didn't come to result of that, but I think some of the discussion was about that. That being said, if we're going to have 1 complete, then it should be 1 for 1 and 1 is 2, as opposed to language of maximum of 3 units.
Okay, and I know that there's an instinct to make sure in our efforts here, we are including inclusive housing. I think that it really comes down to who are we dealing with? We're dealing with an individual that owns generally a single building that they're either putting another floor on or cutting it up inside to make the different units. And I think the burden on the reporting is sufficiently daunting to prevent it from even happening. So again, I agree with the thought that that it's too much to add at this level. I don't think the reward is there. I don't think we're even going to get the beginning of the reward. The beginning of the reward is to help build a little wealth for some people and also to create more housing. And I don't think we'll get it if we require 1 out of 3 to be affordable. We're not going to add enough affordable to move a needle. And I think we will build a barrier in front of doing it so we don't even get the unit. So that's my concern, and that's where I will settle. But again, it's a collective that we're dealing with.
Okay, well, let's move along. Okay, so this section is the mixed use and or multifamily residential buildings meeting the following conditions. Again, like the previous section, it's got conditions, it's got setbacks that match the current zoning setbacks, parking requirements, architectural standards, outdoor areas for people to use. If it's located on Bridgeport Avenue, you can't have any residential units on the first floor, because that would be in keeping those buildings, that first floor commercial use to match the rest of the avenue. So here's the next discussion, which is the bonus. So say you want to take your, we're calling it, well, new construction of multifamily residential buildings or mixed use. These are the proposed bonus provisions. 15% of the units would be affordable, and then the building height, you'd get a bonus of 20 feet. So you go from 40 feet to 60 feet. And then if you're doing that, then what we do, because some thought was given to, well, how does this affect the neighbors? Because right now in that zone, we have setbacks of 0 and 10 feet. Generally, 10 feet is what we sort of like to see. That way, people can maintain their buildings. Because of the extra 20 feet in height, if this happens to be built, abutting a residential zone, we'd be looking at a minimum of 20 feet from the sidelines and rear lot lines. And maximum building coverage would also go up to 75%. So what we'll be looking for guidance on is, well, is 15 reasonable, or do you want to discuss a sliding scale? And the committee wanted me to come up with some options for discussion purposes of what that a sliding scale could look like, and that's what's down here in green. So,
and again, what's in green is sliding is up for discussion. Obviously, the whole thing's up for discussion, but the 15%. If we want the bottom line to be 20%, then we can do that. If we don't want the project size of 8 units to be where affordability kicks in, we can kick that down to 6. And, so this is something that we have, that we definitely wanted to get everybody's input on. You didn't want to try to, and the whole committee wanted to make sure that the whole board had input on this. So if you go back up to the top, David and Eton, just, we're going to sort of be informal. So because it is Zoom and I'm not always looking at the top of my screen to see who wants to speak, just chime in as a conversation, please. Feel comfortable with that.
All right, Eitan Hirsch. So if you're gonna have go back up, I'm sorry, Dave, the 5,000 square feet,
Yes,
that means that is 5,000 feet is a little more than a tenth of an acre.
Mhm.
So an acre is, I think, 46,000 square feet. So you're gonna have you're gonna have a structure on a tenth of an acre with 8 to 10 units. You're gonna have developers coming in. You're gonna turn the CDD2 zone into a row of 10-unit apartments between the bridge and McDonald's and down by Naugatuck Avenue.
and now I will tell you why that won't happen. If you,
Why won't that happen?
because again, as any development that takes place in the city, I mean, we have building coverages, we have setbacks, and then we have an outdoor requirement. So if they're able to park it, that's going to be a big deal. So if you're going to create 10 units, you've got to show 10 parking spaces, and that could be a pretty big thing to show. It could be underneath the building. I mean, there's different ways of doing things, but I don't know that right out of the box that just because you have a 5,000 square foot lot, you're going to end up with 10 units out of it.
Well, we saw recently that looked like that rotisserie car thing that I have in New York City with that project over on Cherry Street. So I got to tell you, this is going to open the door potentially to turning the CDT2 zone into apartment alley.
Well, so I guess, Eton, to just chime in, that is exactly what we're hoping to do. We're exactly hoping to do that, to create an opportunity for development that will support the retail in the area, to create housing. We have, and I think that, once, David, if you could, while I'm chatting it up, put on the diagram
But Mr.
that,
Quish,
I'm going to ask David to put something up that shows the lot sizes so we know which ones are 5,000 and more. He
Yep.
had the GIS people do this map for us. And I think that if we look at what's there now, and we look at what we're trying to do, and again, your thoughts are valued and we may disagree, that's okay too, but we're not gonna find a thriving, obviously anybody can come in and do 830G no matter what. So if somebody really wants to do housing and put in 30%, they could do it, no matter, because we can't say no. So what we're trying to do is give developers an opportunity, and some of these people that may own the property now, to have development opportunities. Again, our kind of marching orders are find a way to create housing in areas that are not exclusively single-family neighborhoods, that are commercial, that are a mixed-use neighborhood, right?
Right,
So,
but Mr.
good, Eton, please.
But Mr. Quish, I agree with you that we need more housing. I totally agree with you. But on the one hand, you say that you want to build wealth for people, but when apartment complexes, those are owned by one person. Those aren't condos where you have 8 owners in one area. So the only person we're building wealth for is the one owner of that property, which is usually a corporation rather than a mom and pop that we're looking at.
Right.
Previously. That's my issue. I would like to create more owner occupied, if possible, to create owner occupied units rather than these big apartment corporations coming in and
I think that's a great thought.
Creating a nation of renters and creating a nation of renters.
I think it's a great thought. I think that if we want to incentivize that in our discussion here, we can, as we are giving carrots, if you do a development of, say, 8 units and you have a carrot of XYZ, if you're going to create condominiums and sell them individually, then you get XYZ plus 1. So we could incentivize ownership in that way, or the development to be tailored towards individual ownership. And I don't think that's a problem. I love that idea.
I do too. I think you nailed it, Jim. I
I
think that's a
don't
great
know that
idea.
we're going to get traction, but I think that that's a great carrot. And I don't know if we have to lessen the carrot for the renter property development, or if we have to add another carrot to the ownership. But I hear you. I think it strengthens, it adds roots to the community. I think ownership is a wonderful thing. I'm with you 100%.
Yep. Thank you.
So
Mr.
just,
Swish.
David, if you would explain this particular diagram, this was something that you had
Yeah.
yes, do.
So this breaks down the lots by size into groupings. So a majority of the lots in the zone are this color here, if everyone can see, minimum 5,000 square feet up to these colors here. The light tan and the white are smaller. So that's why 5,000 was chosen, because that's the predominant minimum size of the zone. So, you know, the oranges here are 5,000 square feet lots. The ones that are darker are larger lots. What else? You know, these colors are even larger lots, and you know, so, and obviously these are all for the most part developed with something on them currently. The exception being some of the city-owned land, which is, you know, down here. But that's where that minimum 5,000 square foot lot idea came to be. And keep in mind that the current zoning, the minimum lot size in the CDD2 is 2,000 square feet. So you can build a single family house on a 2,000 square foot lot in the CDD2. So again, not looking to overcrowd things, you know, the 5,000 minimum lot size was chosen. And obviously things that are in here are even smaller than the 5,000. So I mean, they wouldn't unless someone's going to assemble a bunch of lots. You know, yeah, you're not going to have that 5,000 square foot minimum threshold being met. So.
Right, but that's my concern, is somebody will do that, merge a bunch of lots, common ownership, merger, and then build up giant non-owned apartments. And
again,
you just created a apartment alley.
And again, just a reminder, we can't dictate ownership. We can't dictate.
But we can dictate use.
I would just like to gently offer that there's a huge segment of the population that is not, for whatever reason, are not interested or able to own a home, even a small home. And that renters are also a segment of the population that we need in our city. So it's okay if some of these properties end up being apartment complexes where people rent. I don't think that's something we should be too afraid of.
And I get calls all the time for people looking for apartments, or if there's condos that are for sale, because they want to downsize. They want to get out of their houses. They're, you know, the kids have moved out. They don't need their big houses. And, you know, we don't have, for the most part, a housing stock that is able to accommodate them. Anything new, anyway.
Joe, you know what? I think I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think you're exactly right. That I think what we have found, though, is that the thumb is on the scale of apartments only. We have not had a condominium complex built in the city of Milford in, I don't know, a decade or more, where there was ownership. So everyone who's spending their money, they're doing it for apartments. And I don't mind that, but I would like to say that there is some value with underpinning ownership, and it becomes kind of roots in the community, not exclusively. You know, if it ends up at 5% of the stock is condos and 95% is apartments, I think that's pretty cool. As long as there's a little bit of, you know, we're here to stay kind of feeling, or you buy something and you you fix it up or whatever, and you sell it, and you have a little sweat equity in something, that's okay. But I hear you, and I have no interest personally in trying to change the whole conversation to condominiums exclusion of apartments. I would think if we end up with
neither did I.
95.5, I'd be amazed if we could even do that.
Yeah, neither did I. It wasn't one to the exclusion of the other. My issue is I've had many conversations with many people over the last several years. There's nowhere to downsize in the city. If you're somebody that wants to downsize and you're of retirement age, where do you go? They have rights. Shouldn't they have the ability to downsize to an owner so they can then transfer it to their family or their, because you can't transfer an apartment to your heirs.
I think the more options we support, the better. And I'm not sure exactly how to do it all, but I think we want to have some ownership options. We want to have some affordability options. We want to have some market rate options. It just is the nature of the business is that market rate dictates the value of a month in a place.
Yeah, and the challenge that we have also is the availability of land. We're seeing a lot of rentals for, among other reasons, and this is what makes it what it is we're seeing units or multiple units being put on smaller pieces of property because that's where they can do it. That's what the zoning allows. And if it doesn't allow it by right, then they do it through 830G. And, we're not seeing, the board, at least at this point, isn't looking at, well, where are the larger tracts of land that could be developed into, what you would think of as a townhouse community with ownership. And, those are in, that land is most likely zoned RA. And, the board, if you're serious about wanting that kind of housing, then again, we don't have tracts of land,
Well, and as we've discussed, we're going to go look at the CDD zones. We're going to maybe look at light industrial. We're going to maybe look at a number of zones.
Right.
We're going to take a little look at each thing and see how it best serves us. Now, at one point, there was a real huge need for light industrial because there was, 1,000 people with small businesses that were using these. And I don't know that that's the case anymore. So it could be that and again, this is the first thing. This is not a third district attack on CDD2. This is just a first step in taking a deeper look at where we can exercise our planning capacity, not just approving CAMs. Robert?
Thank you very much. And, this wasn't a blank slate that we came to, and I am your liaison to the South Council Regional Governments. Other communities around us, and I'm talking about the fact that we should have an affordable housing component in there, and the numbers that are proposed in this document, I don't agree with. I think they're way too low. And I made that clear at the last meeting. Hamden, 20% affordable housing. Southington, no less than 20%. Woodbridge, Opportunity Housing, no less than 20% affordable. Wallingford has a sliding scale. There was a couple of projects in Fairfield, 30% affordable housing. So I think that we should have a percentage. Now, I know that there was a discussion and it's changed as board option discussion. Well, the board option was first to set a specific percentage or the sliding scale. And these were numbers that were originally started. The 8 to 10 with one affordable housing unit is less than 10%. And you go through that. And I think that we should be up at 20%, if not more, of affordable housing. And I recognize that this is our first discussion and, maybe 5,000 feet may be too large, maybe too small. I quite frankly expected that most of these materials that the regulation committee had would be with the board members. So I'd ask that through the chair, Mr. Sulkus, get the maps and the different documents that we had so we can have a full discussion of it. But I think that 20% is a number we should be using for giving them benefits for height, benefits for possible parking issues, depending how they decide to develop the project. But the idea was to take properties that are existing there, some of which might need remediation effects on the corridor because of the businesses, but maybe they're not going to be business anymore, that we might have some open properties. And that's what we're trying to do, is get housing in there. That's on the Naugatuck Avenue side of it. The Bridgeport Avenue side of it is a mixed use. So you're going to have mixed use, which is going to be a business generally with other properties above it, units above it. And we're giving them extra height that they would not otherwise have. And we're giving the ability to have residential units also there, which again, whoever owns that property, in theory, they'd be making more money because it's not just one business. It's one business with several other different units. And I think that one of the things that comes to mind, we approved the project on Rose's Mill. It had a fire at some point, but it's got a bank. It's got several offices on the first floor. And I think it's got 2 to 3 floors of residential units above it. I think that's kind of what we've been looking to do along the CDD that we're talking about here, but the others. So I'd ask you to consider that other communities are requiring 20% or more, and they are putting that affordability component in there. I want to make it clear, as the chair has already done, this is not an 830G application. There are still requirements that if you want to follow this change, if we do make the change, there are setback requirements, there are side lot requirements, there are front yard requirements, there are parking requirements. So I think that we should consider those numbers. But thank you, sir.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. John, I see your hand up.
Yes, I finally figured out how to raise my hand. All right. So the whole discussion about the for sale housing, I mean, I've been beating this drum since I joined the board last year. I think it's great. I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the tools that we have that can encourage that sort of development? Now, I know there's been this talk about the missing middle, townhouse development and whatnot. And I think this would probably be a good zone for that sort of development and some of these larger lots that we could redevelop. Again, this might be a good case where we bring in some outside commentary, like what could we offer to a developer that would make that sort of development attractive from a zoning standpoint? Just some thoughts.
Well, I appreciate that. We did have developers come in and some attorneys, but to have more information. I mean, it would be good, David, if you could. We're going to wind up in a minute, and we're going to carry this on to the next regular meeting. We're not going to try to. I was hoping to get something where we could circulate this, but we're not going to get there tonight. So we're going to put this as the first thing, or not necessarily the first thing. We're going to put it on next meeting's agenda, along with whatever else is in queue and backlog of David, to continue this discussion. And we will continue this discussion to make sure that everyone has a voice and we craft something that really is beneficial for the city and gives us. I think one thing that we're doing now, some of the hard work that may be valuable as a potential template for the other CDD zones and other zones where we want to change stuff, and we want to add carrots and encourage development the way we want it, not just automatically have to acquiesce to 830G. So if we spend a little time on this, I was obviously ambitious and hoping to circulate it. We're not going to get there tonight, so we'll put this on the next. But just so that we all realize it's not just spinning wheels. It could be foundational in how we go after or approach other zones to find the results that we kind of want to promote. So we are at about an hour, and if anyone else would like to chime in before we call it a meeting, then please do.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I just wanted to add, while it's fresh in the air, that I want to second what Mr. Sadi said, that I think 20% or higher numbers are more appropriate. I'm also, to be honest, I am a little bit concerned that the way this is drafted, personally, I think that any multifamily projects with 8 or more units should have some affordable housing in this area, but rather than just as an incentive for a higher building. But I know that there were longer discussions about that. But the point is, I think that a higher number, like 20%, is more appropriate.
Thank you. David, if you could put up the agenda, want to make sure we get to our minute approval.
Is it showing? Is the
Yeah,
agenda
we have public hearing, none, old business, none, liaison reports,
None at this point. The meeting's next week.
none. Subcommittee reports, we just sort of did that. Approval of minutes, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Without objection? Approved. Chair's report. Now, thank you for everybody for putting their time and effort into this, and I think we, this is an important part of planning and zoning, right? There's zoning that we have issues on a specific project, but here we have some input on planning, and this is, for me, it's sort of the more fun part, but it's also where we can do some good. And so staff report, we already got to that. Do you have anything more?
Yes, I do. Just to keep you on your toes, I have staff report tonight. We have got a request for an extension of time to submit the final site plan development plan for Wheeler's Farms Road. Back in July, you approved a project for the which is basically a floating zone for 470, 488 Wheeler's Farms Road. The regulations for that talk about the construction, the submittal of the final plan that would show you exactly what's going on would be done within a year of the application. So the application was in July. They will not be ready by this July, but they're thinking, August they may be ready. So they're asking for an extension. Also, this project has gone from being very quiet to there's a new partnership involved with it, and the lead developer now of the project is Continental Development, which is the entity that developed the Muse right next door. So I think there's going to end up being some sort of synergy between the Muse and the development of this site. So just to let you know.
So do we need to act, or can you do that administratively?
We can do that. You can do that administratively. I just wanted you to know.
Well, I appreciate, I do appreciate that. Thank you for that. We all should know, but I just didn't know if we needed a motion. That's all.
No, there's no formal vote needed. If there was an objection, but I obviously don't think there's an objection because everyone wants to see the site be redeveloped. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, without objection. Thank you, everybody. A lot of basketball to watch tonight.
Good night.
Have a good one, everyone.
Everyone.